Hello, my name is Javier Mondragon, and this is my wife, Annette Mondragon. We both pastors Grace Point South Campus here in the southeast area of Fort Wayne. I grew up in Mexico. I grew up in the second most violent neighborhood in the city. The neighborhood where I grew up was very violent. Drugs and alcohol were part of every day. In every corner you can see it.
I grew up first couple years in California. I remember missing school because of the Rodney King beating and the riots. And that was traumatizing for a 10-year-old to have to go through. After that, we moved to Arkansas, where my neighbors were cows and chickens, and everything was safe. It wasn't until I met my husband that life got exciting.
We came to plant Grace Point South 5 years ago. It's a bilingual and multi-ethnic church. And I always said that whenever I go to be a minister, anywhere I go, I wanted my church to do something for the community and to speak to those who are around us. Our church is located in the southeast Fort Wayne, and we live in the parsonage, which is right next to church, so we are here. Although lately, really the violence have been very active in this area, specifically here in the southeast. Every time you turn on the news, they always say it was the southeast where there was a shooting or something. And so very specifically here in our street, just last month, there was a shooting when people shoot at a house and more than 30 bullets. The police report after that more than 30 bullets went into the house. And so I was in the living room that day. It was about 1 a.m. I was watching a game, and I remember it was so loud. I went to the floor right away. I didn't know where it was coming from or where they were going. So my wife stood up, but she was already asleep, and she came out, and we both called the police. And the police came right away, but they didn't catch anybody. So the violence is right here, is where we are.
I did not expect the type of neighborhood that we moved into, not at all. When you go to Kroger and there's an armed police officer at the door every night, it's a little alarming. When you go out on your street and you hear bullets, it's a little alarming. When you know that the house across the street is selling drugs, it's a little alarming. The night before the shooting that happened 2 doors down, as I went to bed, I was reminded of a story in the Bible, and God spoke to me about being the God who sees me, El Roy. And it was really comforting that night to know that He sees where I am, and He promises that He has a future for me and my children. And so I went to bed not knowing why God was speaking that to me. And about an hour and a half later, I woke up to bullets, and it sounded like it was my house. And I thought it could be going into my children's bedroom, which faces the street. And God gave me peace that morning. And my husband told me later that day, he says, I've never wanted to move out of this neighborhood, but if you want to, we'll do it. And I told him, you know, God spoke to me, and He said that this is where He put us, and that we're supposed to do something about that.
5 years ago, when we first came to start the church, one of the first things we did is we went out to the neighborhood and knocked on doors, and we had a survey. In the survey, there was a question. The question was, what is the biggest need in the community? The number one answer of the people was, we don't feel safe. We prayed, and we thought, okay, what could we do? What could we do as a church to help with that issue if we are for the community? I read a book called The Tipping Point with Malcolm Gladwell. And one of the chapters in that book talks about the broken window theory, that when nobody cares in the community, if somebody breaks a window and you don't fix it, it sends a signal that nobody cares and nobody really takes care of that community. And so it's easy for somebody else to break a second one. The graffiti, if nobody cleans the graffiti, it sends a signal that nobody cares, nobody is there, feels responsible for that community. And then we came up with the idea of, as a church, doing Adopt a Block.
So the idea of Adopt a Block is that we as believers in Christ are going to go out and adopt physically a neighborhood in our area and show them that we care, that their neighborhood is valuable, and empower the neighbors to do it for themselves.
I thought, if we can help them to build relationships and start to get to know each other. So Adopt a Block also has a purpose of connecting people. Speaking with Pastor Joe, he reminded us at the end of the day, the violence, the crime, everything that happens, really there is something behind it, and it's the spiritual war that we are in. And you can see that it was the enemy just holding the whole community, holding people back and holding them back to don't have progress and don't go farther. Is the enemy that doesn't want to see, doesn't want to let us know that we have hope, that there is an answer. There are no limits to what we can do when we all come together and fight and do something for the kingdom together.
When you let the enemy tell you that your neighborhood is worthless or unvaluable or unredeemable, then he's already won. And when you move out for the wrong reason because you think that it's unsafe and there's nothing that can be done, then you're saying God isn't enough and the enemy has won with that thought. So for us, that means staying in our home in this neighborhood because we know that the Lord can do greater things than the enemy has planned.